Hi friends, and thank you for joining me for another video. And friends, this week's Parshas are Vayakhel and Pekudei. And although from the outset it seems that there is not much ethically we can learn from these Parshas, if the subtleties are contemplated on, you realize that there is more here than there seems to be. Now, this Parsha begins where we read in Parshas Truma that the Almighty commands Moses to get an offering from the people. And I think the real substance here is the use of the words command and offerings, which I really think is the basis for Torah theology. The notion that none of this is pressed on anyone, and by exercising your free will to do good, you can secure a positive outcome for yourself and your family. To the point that the Parsha begins with the Almighty stating that whoever willingly violates the Sabbath, that person should be put to death. Now, you're probably thinking, where's the optionality there? Easy. No one forced you to become or remain a Jew, even though you may have had a Jewish mother, which is an aspect that always baffled me when I would hear Jews say things like, it's such a burden being Jewish, especially when they're not even religious. I always thought to myself, if the pros don't outweigh the cons, okay, then leave. I mean, being Jewish is not a race, right? Just blend into your surroundings, which is one of the main characteristics that separate our God from the rest. And what's that? The opportunity to let you fail. Not that you would succeed with the others, but you know what? You wouldn't know the difference anyways. Why? Because in our belief system, the rewards are evidently bundled within the commands themselves. In other words, they're ethically reciprocal, like some sort of moral boomerang. But anyways, then it states that all who were willing and whose heart moves him brought a gift to the building of the Mishkan. In other words, when it states whose heart moved him, we know that heart in Torah refers to the mind or intellect. So in other words, whoever got it and understood the message they gave. And this is really the reason for me teaching you today, with the hope that you would also get it and begin contributing to the cause and in turn be blessed. And what's that cause, friends? Nothing less than making the world a better place. The only way we can, which is by keeping and encouraging others to keep God's commandments. Then the Parsha goes on to mention Bezalel and the artistic talent that God bestowed upon him, showing that this is how a gifted person shows his gratitude, by giving back. And honestly, in what way could we ever expect a naturally talented person to feel gracious unless by reminding him that God himself was the one who gave the talent? And as the Parsha teaches, not only did they give, but it also goes on to say that they were also filled with the Spirit of God. And you know what? Till now, I never really put together what that statement meant. I mean, we hear all the time about being filled by the Spirit of God, but we always have heard it, even in Jewish circles, to depict some sort of spiritual possession, but not at all. Here it shows us that being filled with the Spirit of God could only mean being inspired to behave as God does. And that's all. And that's what the Spirit of God means. His will, either willfully acting through us, or that potential of emulation as described in how he acts in our behalf. And any other understanding will have you eventually making it a force outside of God, or like Christians call it, the third in the Godhead. Then, friends, we see something awesome happen, which is when the people began to give generously. We see Moses stepping in and saying, that's enough, to the point that it states that the people had to be restrained from giving more, which is actually a trap many religious people fall into even today. The idea of giving more than you have to. Not that the narrative is telling us that giving a little more is a bad thing, but that, wait, hold on, you'll have the ability to give more later in perhaps other areas, which, my friends, we don't see them doing, which is usually synonymous with people who fall into any extreme, that those around them are the ones who end up suffering. So in other words, in retrospect, we know that they didn't want to give for a productive purpose, or that generous attitude would have encompassed other areas in their lives, but rather they wanted to bribe God, which is how other gods of the times were worshipped. I give you this, you give me that, but not this one, friends, which is why we're actually forbidden in Judaism to give away all our possessions. Why? Because although from the outset it may be seen as an act of piety, it virtually always has a crooked source. Because obviously, if you gave it all away, what's your children or your wife going to do? Or who's going to take care of your parents? Or you never know, perhaps this cause may be false, and tomorrow you'll be confronted with a better one. Are you beginning to see how the Torah deals with real life? This, my friends, is a thinking religion. And this is clearly one area God would not mind bringing disaster upon you for failing to think ahead. We even see this today with the twisted movement seen in the Orthodox world, where people give up their jobs and careers to learn Torah all day. And not only do they live off charity, they send their wives to work. In other words, we must constantly tell ourselves, does something not just sound or look good, but does it do good? And that is a huge problem within any of the ascetic groups today. They assume because someone looks excessively religious that that person is in some way closer to the truth, which has always been the only way we could see the world improve, by little increments. Compare that to the utopian movements that have only left mass death and carnage for us to read about. To the point that the Rambam writes that the right way is the middle or balanced way, which is not only the lesson being taught here, but it's one of the principal lessons in the Torah, that it's just as important to stop than to start, that this is too much and that's too little, that real people in a real world know that there are no simple answers to the world's tough problems. It's really some of this and some of that, and a time for this and a time for that. Regardless, you have to think. It's not just throw yourself in the fire or just leave everything up to God when there are avenues you haven't tried yet. And friends, if you're interested in learning more about Torah, Judaism, please visit bejewish.org. And if you're interested in becoming a Jew yourself, please visit Torah Judaism International at torahjudaism.org. Thank you.